operations manager of Midwest Workers Association, and very honored to welcome you all here tonight at this very difficult time for all of us who look to President Hugo Chavez as an emulative leader for working people, not only in his country, but worldwide. And under his leadership, I know I don't have to tell any of you what the people of Venezuela have accomplished. For our membership of the Working Poor, the connection is very strong in many ways, including not only the emulative example, but the people of Venezuela through SIGO have supported our efforts and efforts like ours across the country, extending that hand of solidarity to the lowest paid workers here in the United States, with the sophisticated understanding that the United States government and the United States people are not the same thing, and that there is a struggle going on here to change the future course of our nation. So we are very honored to be able to host you and thank Trinity Episcopal Church for hosting us tonight and providing this space. And for myself, it's a very emotional time, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you people of like mind. So just in terms of how things will go, I'm going to introduce Consul General Rodriguez in a moment, and then we'll have a short prayer from Father Bob Fenn, and then the mic will be open to those who wish to speak and share. I know what Consul General Rodriguez had in mind was, for people to be able to share from their heart what they're doing at this time, which is, of course, a very difficult time for all of us, and a time where, the President Chavez and the people of Venezuela and all those who struggle for change are, under attack. But we are here in solidarity. So thank you all, and I'd like to turn it over to Consul General Rodriguez.
Hi, good night. My name is Jesus Rodriguez. My name is Jesus Rodriguez. I want to thank you all for being here, showing your support to President Chavez and to the Venezuelan people and to the Bolivarian Revolution. I want to particularly thank the Midwest Workers Association that is always instrumental to helping us with these last-minute events. And of course, I want to thank you all for being here. La Voz de los Hermanos has been always around with ideas and with suggestions. And the people from the Arab American Action Network that are always around. I'm going to forget a lot of people, but I just want to thank you all for being here. I know that you really support and feel in a particular way the pass away of President Chavez the same way that we feel it. And basically what I want to tell you is that we, of course, I believe that 60% of the Venezuelan population is like in shock right now, very affected in the national sense because of the death of President Chavez. But at the same time, we are getting stronger. I don't know. I just suggest you to watch the photos and the videos of the mobilization today in Caracas, when people was saying goodbye to President Chavez, and you will understand what I'm trying to tell you. I mean, this situation, I believe, is going to strengthen us. We are in front of elections. I believe, and most of the polls says that Chavez candidate is going to win, which is the executive vice president. So everything says that we are going to keep in the track to try to accomplish the ideas and the project that Hugo Chavez somehow want us to accomplish. We still have to fix and to solve a lot of problems in Venezuela, but I believe that we're going to move forward, and with the help of you people like you guys here in the U.S., I believe that it's going to be easier for us. Some of you maybe don't see the way we see it as foreigners, I mean as a Venezuelan. But your solidarity, your support, even in the country that most of the Venezuelans see as the evil, is very important. And I want to let you know that we as diplomats in this country, especially as Venezuelan diplomats in this country, we try to let our leaders in Venezuela to understand that there is a difference between what Virginia was saying, between the government of the U.S. and the people of the U.S. So in that sense, I just want to say thank you again all of you being here, and I want to reassure you that we in the Venezuelan Consulate here in Chicago, and I believe that all over the Venezuelan all over the Venezuelan Consulate in the U.S. I don't need it. Are always going to be there to be in touch with the grassroots organizations, with the progressive forces here in the U.S. And I want to let you know that the Venezuelan people is going to move forward, and we're going to try to make Chavez project go deeper. And I'm sure that we're going to do so. Thank you again. And right now, I believe that as Virginia said, we're going to have a prayer from Father Popin that I want to thank you also because he's always there helping us in these religious activities. And after that, we're going to have like a session of speeches. We want to try to let everyone that want to say something about Chavez or the Venezuelan Revolution say. So thank you again, and please come in, Father Finn.
Okay. Thank you, Jesus. Tonight we mourn the loss of Hugo Chavez, but with it also we celebrate his life, his being with us, his serving all of us, giving us inspiration to really go for our rights, what is due us and our fellow workers, the poor, the less advantaged, who would be quite alone without people like Hugo Chavez. He's an inspiration to all of us, starting off just with just about nothing, finally leading a country and bringing his people, and everything he did was for the people, to bring them up to a level of a wonderful life, full health care, the very things we're working for, and the very things that Jesus has helped us with in our organization work. And so we pray tonight. We thank God for everything we have now. We thank God for the spirit to fight for those who are less fortunate than ourselves. We thank God for being with us in our struggle for better lives, fuller lives for each and every one of us. And we thank especially our Lord for the gift of realizing that we can get together, we can organize, we can be in a group that becomes powerful and already is in many respects. A group that can share its resources, not so much in wealth, but certainly in labor. We need those warm and working bodies. And we thank the Lord for our, as it stands, we're all made for a purpose to serve God and our fellow people, fellow workers, those who especially for Hugo. Amen. So I'll do is have some thoughts for people who remember Hugo Chavez, his appearance on the scene, his help with his people, and what some suggestions of how we might imitate him. Would somebody be interested in offering some reminiscence about Hugo?
I'll have it reminiscent about my name is Jabali Clay from the All African People Revolutionary Party, and they asked me to come and show solidarity to people who remember Chavez. And I thought about it. I said, he's Venezuelan. I know about Ozzie Guillen and Louis Aparicio. Okay, but I was telling somebody today when I first got here that he was one of the people, one of the world leaders that would tell the truth about the relationship that the United States has with the world. And I thought, because of that, that would be something for me to come in and just say something that the party put together. To the Venezuelan people, the All African People's Revolutionary Party sends its sincere condolences to the biological and ideological family of the Honorable Revolutionary Leader, Comrade Hugo Chavez. We appreciate and extol the many contributions Comrade Hugo Chavez and the Venezuelan people have made to those revolutionary organizations, parties, and countries struggling throughout the world. Our party will never forget the support the Venezuelan people has shown us through their enthusiastic participation whenever and wherever we requested their support for African Liberation Day, women's conferences, symposia, and seminars. Comrade Revolutionary Leader Chavez has inspired progressive and revolutionary people throughout the world, and his revolutionary words, deeds, and analysis will keep us moving forever, forward ever, and backwards never. The AAPRP stands with the people of Venezuela. We are comrades, revolutionary leader Hugo Chavez. Long live the Bolivarian Revolution. Viva Venezuela.
Hi, my name is Jim Femerty. I'm with the National Lawyers Guild, and I just want to say a couple of things, about what really Hugo Chavez stands for. And I was lucky back about 8 years ago to go on a delegation. We had a Lawyers Guild delegation to Venezuela. And it's not just that we met with people from the government, but you learn because we met with people from the opposition too. And I'll never forget, we met with a group called Primero Justicio, First Justice. That's what they called themselves, right? And was the largest opposition group at the time. So we asked them, what are your complaints about the Chavez and his revolution here? First one was, well, they have all these Cuban doctors here, 14,000 of them, all these Cuban doctors here, and they're not licensed to practice medicine here. And we're all thinking, well, if the 14,000 Cuban doctors weren't there, who would never be serviced? They'd never get any medical care, because when the government called for people to come, doctors to go and work in the poor communities, in the ranchos they call them, 50 doctors volunteered. That's it. Then we said, what else? And they said, well, they're building all these universities, new universities. And they said, who would want to send your kids to one of those schools? And then the third thing we asked him, what else? And he said, well, what they're doing is they're encouraging people to go back to the countryside so they can be, try to be self-sufficient in growing food, and encouraging people to set up, cooperatives. And he said, well, the corporations could run those farms much more efficiently. Chavez is about. That's what the revolution's about. And the last thing I want to mention too is that we went to a cooperative one time. I'll never forget this. It almost brought tears to my eyes. We were there at this cooperative, and we got there late because we're always running around trying to do too many things in one day. And there's only a couple of people there working. So I started talking to this one woman. I asked her, how has your life changed since the revolution? And she said, well, now I can support my family, I can feed my family. And then she stood up, and I'll never forget this, she took off her glasses. And I'm working late tonight because I go to school like 3 days a week in the daytime. And we're all thinking, because we're all on the Lawyers Guild delegation, we're all college graduates, and she's going to college. And she says, she was so proud, and she stuck out her chest, and she said, I'm getting my primary degree. And here's a lady, before the revolution, who never had an opportunity to go to grammar school, and she's getting her primary degree. So anyways, this loss of Hugo Chavez, the revolution will continue. I'm sure with Maduro it's going to go on with the people for this participatory democracy there. But this is a loss for not only the people of Venezuela, but all the people in the world struggling against imperialism and want to build socialism.
Hugo Chavez mean to me, but I'm speaking personally. I'm not necessarily speaking on behalf of any organization. I'm speaking on behalf of my personal feelings. One of the main things that really attracted me to Hugo Chavez was the fact that he embraced his African heritage. It united people of color, African people of color, me being Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latinos, Africans all over. It unified. We appreciated him so much. I especially appreciate him so much for doing it. Also, the strength he took when he stood up to former President Bush, referring to him as Satan. He showed great courage to people, even people here who felt the same way, but didn't necessarily have the strength or the courage to say it. He has now become an ancestor. We are grateful that we have had him around. I admire, I adore him, and let us keep his legacy alive by having the strength and the courage that President Hugo Chavez, they say even when great people pass, you speak of them in the present tense, you don't speak of them in the past tense. President Hugo Chavez, let's keep his legacy alive by showing the same strength and courage and the unification that he brought about by standing up for those people who didn't necessarily stand up for themselves. Thank you.
I'm Matt Ginsberg-Jacob. I am with Southside Together Organizing for Power, but like the brother said, I'm speaking on behalf of myself personally. I had the privilege of being in Venezuela for a short time in 2006 during the World Social Forum. And it was a time when in my mind I was still forming what is the alternative, what's really truly possible in the face of empire, in the face of so many defeats, and had the good fortune of running across a group called the Comité de los Sin Techo. While I was there, a group of people that had taken over corporate office spaces, abandoned buildings, etc., and turned them into massive cooperatives that on first floors would have production where people who were unemployed were creating their own jobs and creating their own productive activity, and the rest of it was I went through the buildings and there was corporate office desks where CEOs had once sat, were now being used to change diapers for babies that had been brought in. And I said, how is this possible? They had 30 different buildings in downtown Caracas that they had taken over and turned into cooperative. I said, how is it possible that landlords don't come in and violently displace you? How is it possible that you're able to set all of this up? They said, we have the backing of Chavez. We know that no matter what, that Chavez is with us because Chavez knows what it's like to not have a roof over your head. Chavez knows what it's like to be from our people. And that was something that I'll never forget. I remember a woman who was probably 80 years old with no shoes on, with only about half the teeth in her mouth, saying, the day that they tried to take Uncle Manateo, the day that they said that they were going to defeat him through a coup, I told all my grandkids, I told all my kids, get your coats on, get your blankets over your shoulders, and we're going down to the presidential palace, because not for a second I'm going to let them take the roof that I finally have over my head away from me. And that was something that really stuck with me, and I think that that's what Chavez for a lot of us represents, right? It's not necessarily what Chavez himself as a person was, right? But it's what he was willing to do. He was willing to do what all great leaders and organizers should do, which is not necessarily chart the path for everybody, but give a space for the rage that's already felt amongst those who've been denied everything for so long, to finally find expression, to finally start knocking down walls and not hold back that rage. And then, as those walls get knocked down, be willing to dare to let the dreams that have always been there, that are alternatives to this racist capitalist system that we all live under, come to fruition. And that's what has been happening in Venezuela. Nobody here, I don't think, would say that everything has been perfect, but what has been happening is for the first time people are beginning to chart their own course, their own destiny. And in a moment in which, let's not forget when Chavez came about, this was a moment in which the neoliberals, the capitalists around the world were saying, we finally defeated socialism, it's all over, there is no other alternative, right? They blasted that apart. I think we forget the free trade area of the Americas and so many other plans to completely finish privatizing this whole hemisphere were considered to be foregone conclusions. And now we don't even ever think that the free trade of the Americas would be possible again, right now, at least in Latin America, given the opening that was able to be created. And then the last thing I just want to say is, in the midst of all of our struggles here, it's so important for us to continue reminding people that are in the midst of, for example, in the case of our organization, in the midst of fighting for our lives as they close down our mental health clinics in the city, in the midst of fighting for our lives as they deny trauma care to young people and are willing to let people die in the streets and not provide them basic health care, to not be afraid to say that those struggles are part of the Venezuelan people's struggles as well, that this is all connected, and that what Venezuela represents for us is the fact that we don't have to continue living like this, that we can eventually defeat this system just the way that Venezuelan people are. And I don't have a single doubt in my mind that they're going to continue to knock down those walls and continue to create spaces in which the dreams, not just of the Venezuelan people, but of oppressed people around the world, can continue to come to fruition. So I'm sad, and I've been glued to the Telesur all day long watching the incredible outpouring of support, but I'm also incredibly inspired to see the level of conviction and the level of consciousness and the level of determination. That's something that I think all of us can learn from and are all going to take with us as we continue moving forward.
I'm not a professional interpreter like Matt, so bear with me. Rasmiya Yusuf is going to speak in Arabic.
My name is Rasmiya. I'm from Arab American Action Network. I'm a Palestinian woman, so I could express myself in Arabic better, and I asked him to translate. في هذا اليوم عندما سمعنا بالأمس بوفاة الرئيس شافيز تألمنا كثيرا.
On this day, when we heard about the passing of President Chavez, it affected us greatly.
أستطيع أن أقول أني بتكلم عن نفسي وبتكلم عن الفلسطينيين المنتشرين في كل أنحاء العالم.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Palestinians across the world.
رئيس شافيز كان رئيس عظيم، وهو الرئيس الوحيد عندما إسرائيل خاضت الحرب ضد الفلسطينيين في قطاع غزة وقف وتحدى العالم بكل قوة ليقول أنا بجانب الفلسطينيين وضد إسرائيل.
During the Israeli invasion and attacks on Gaza in 2008-2009, he was the first and one of the only presidents around the world who came out very strongly and openly and said, I am in support of the Palestinian people in this struggle.
لم يخاف من أي قوة في العالم رغم كل التهديدات التي واجهها.
and he was never intimidated by any force in the world, even though him and his revolution were under constant attack from the imperialists.
كان الرئيس شافيز رئيس عظيم وقف بجانب قضيتنا وكان رمزا لجميع الأطفال الحجارة في فلسطين.
He was a great leader who was an absolute icon for all the Palestinian people, including what we call the children of the stones.
بوقوفه إلى جانبنا كان يعطيهم القوة ليتحدوا كل أدوات القهر والدمار الإسرائيلية ويقفوا بقوة في وجه كل الأدوات القتال.
He gave our people the strength to continue to fight against all of the challenges that they were facing with the racist, colonialist Israeli state.
حتى شعبنا كان يواجه الدمار من قبل إسرائيل والاحتلال الصهيوني، كان يخرج إلى الشوارع ليحيي الرئيس شافيز في الشوارع على مواقفه لجانبنا.
Even when we were facing the attack of the Zionist state, the Palestinian people were still out in the streets raising their hands and their slogans in support of President Chavez and his policies in Venezuela and across the world.
عشان هيك احنا بنشعر انه احنا لم نفقده، لان افكاره ودعمه ستبقى لجانبنا وتشكل لنا نور ومناره في نضالنا الوطني والنضال العالمي بشكل عام.
He and his movement are a guiding light for our movement, our liberation movement, and the liberation of all people across the world.
فقط اليوم أنا سمعت قصة صغيرة لكنها تعني الكثير عندما سمعت أنه يقف لجانب الفقراء حتى في أكبر دولة في الولايات المتحدة ويدعم بعض العائلات الفقيرة هنا في أمريكا.
I heard for the first time today an incredible story that even in the United States, the richest country in the world, President Chavez and his Bolivarian revolution supported oppressed and poor people with aid in the United States.
لذلك ستبقى ثورته ونضاله منارة لجميع المناضلين في كل العالم وسنقتدي به. سيكون لنا قائد عظيم يساعدنا على الوقوف بقوة في نضالنا الفلسطيني.
And he is again a guiding light in his movement, and his revolution is a guiding light for all the peoples of the world, and will continue to guide the Palestinian people in our struggle for national liberation.
ونعزي الشعب الفنزويلي كما نعزي أنفسنا، لأننا لا نشعر أننا غرباء عنه وإنما نحن عائلة واحدة.
And we offer our condolences to the people of Venezuela, but we're also offering condolences to ourselves, because we are not separated from this sadness, and we are all the people who are being supported by the president and his movement.
ونحن متأكدين أن الشعب الفنزويلي سيستمر على نفس الطريق.
And we are sure that the Venezuelan people are going to continue to move forward with the revolution. Thank you.
Me creo Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, Rafael Correa, Evo Morales, Simón Bolívar soy Salvador Allende, soy hip hop combatiente y rebelde. Me creo comandante, fuerte y saludable. No hay cáncer que me mate, el proceso va para adelante. Soy caminante, parte del pueblo, consejos comunales, organizando base. Hace tu camino, controla tu destino. Hacia una buena vida hay que vivirla digna. Las cifras indican un futuro difícil, misiles y guerra, más gente en pobreza, deuda externa, yanquis están en quiebra, de Gringolandia a Grecia, crisis de hipoteca, Fondo Monetario protege a los empresarios, pero soy González Claudio, expropiando Wells Fargo, soy Castro, soy Chávez, pero al margen del gobierno, soy célula durmiendo dentro del imperio, despierto en el momento preciso, creído porque creo en ese cambio que se vive a diario. Me creo Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, Rafael Correa, Evo Morales, Simón Bolívar, soy Salvador Allende, soy hip hop combatiente y rebelde. Peace, y'all. My name is Rod Stars. And this is my brother. And we are 2/3 of Rebel Diaz. Our brother DJ Illinois is sitting in the back. We didn't have the turntables rock. But more than anything, we are here to say that Chavez is alive and well in the spirits of everybody in this room, in the spirits of oppressed people all across the world who understand that now it is time to step up our game. Now it is time to realize the historic moment that we are living, because all across the country and all across the globe, we are living historic moments of oppression. And to these historic moments of oppression, we must respond with historic moments of resistance. And I say that on many levels. For us, I grew up in Chicago, around many of you, and we've been living in the South Bronx for the last 10 years. And I want to share a story, the sister brought it up earlier. 4.5 years ago, we took over an abandoned candy factory in the South Bronx and turned it into a 5,000 square foot autonomous hip hop community space. The idea of culture in a borough in which hip hop was born, in a borough in which, sadly, an after-school activity for our young people has become to be stopped and frisked, where art programs and after-school programs are cut, we decided to take over a building and turn it into a beautiful hip-hop community space. After a year and a half, we received some assistance from our comrades from the Bolivarian Revolution in the form of a program called the Simón Bolívar Foundation, which came out of Citgo, which is the oil company through Petróleo de Venezuela. With this funding that we were given, we were able to create the Nuestra América Media Center. And for the last 3.5 years in the South Bronx, the community I live in, which is the poorest congressional district in the United States, we were able to have the Nuestra América Media Center, in which we taught young people how to critically analyze media and at the same time become and create their own media, where they learned how to do audio engineering, where they learned how to edit video, where they learned how to write raps and create their own music and their own videos. This was something that was possible because of the solidarity of the Bolivarian Revolution. We are here to share with y'all too that also with the help of the Bolivarian Revolution, through the folks here, the Consul General here in Chicago, the Consul in New York, we were able to go to Venezuela in 2010 when they were having local elections. And with the group Dame Pa Matala, we toured for like 10 different cities in 12 days and were able to feel and see the energy, an energy of a different society. When we talk about cooperatives, there was an initiative in which in the last, I think like 14 years, 100,000 cooperatives were created. The idea of collectives coming together. We saw the power and the support that was given for culture. Chavez saw the power in the young people. He saw the power of hip-hop. We were able to perform at the Encuentro Intercontinental de Hip-Hop that the jóvenes from Hip Hop Revolución had. We were able to witness the EPATUs, which are the Escuelas Populares de Arte y Tecnología Urbana, which were hip-hop's basically a cool name for hip-hop schools, in which young people were taught the arts, how to break dance, and express themselves. This is what we witnessed while we were out there. And we think that with the solidarity that we have shown, there's also inspiration and strength that comes from that. Because I think we sometimes need to extend the conversation of the Americas, of a Nuestra América that ends up also in these lands. Because we are also displaced people. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's what the energy of what Chavez had, is that we are all responsible for the Americas. It is all of our duties, whether we are in the streets of the South Bronx, the streets of Chicago, or the streets of Caracas. We have to understand that the ideals of the Bolivarian Revolution are relevant here, are relevant when we deal with education cutbacks, in which schools are being closed at alarming rates and teachers are being paid, and and there's not an education that teaches our young people how to think, but an education that teaches our young people how to take tests and become robots. I think that there's a lot of the Bolivarian Revolution that we can learn from. The idea of collectives, the idea that young people and that culture are important in social movements, that there's an importance in the arts, that if we're talking about a new society, that new society can include hip-hop, can include la nueva canción. And if we're talking about organizing, and if we really take something out of this, that we have to understand that when we step our game up, that organizing can't be preaching to the choir. That organizing needs to be an international organizing, so that if Palestine is attacked, then we are attacked. If Caracas is attacked, we are attacked. We have to understand and make these international connections. The same way students in Montreal are uprising, they're uprising in Santiago, Chile. This is a connection and an energy that we need to feed off of and build off of, but understand that it's a hard path ahead of us. And that path is going to take organizing. It's going to take organizing like the brother Matt is doing on the south side, and the sister Caro does with the schools on the west side. It's going to take being in the hood, being in the communities, because that's where poor people are. A poor people's movement, a workers' movement, a student movement. And I think that now more than any time, on the personal tip, we need to seize this moment and feel that inspiration and move forward and act on the ideals of the Bolivarian Revolution. That's what we plan to do as Rebel Diaz, as the Rebel Diaz Arts Collective. I do want to share, not to keep that, the focus on that. We were raided, and our space was shut down last Thursday, and it was a raid with federal U.S. Marshals, NYPD, and it is something that we're going through. But we want to share that the same way that the space is taken away, we will be able to see these as obstacles which are only going to make us stronger. So that's our report back from the South Bronx, and we wanted to share our solidarity and share that we will continue working, and that we must continue working as a whole and as a community. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Dreesen, recent graduate from DePaul University, and I want to speak about a personal experience I had this past summer, which I think highlights the importance of Hugo Chavez to Latin America and the world. This past summer, I went on the Venceremos Brigade to Cuba, and with about 30 other people. And for those of you who don't know what exactly that is, it's a group of Americans that has gone to Cuba every year since 1969 without a license from the U.S. government in protest against the illegal, immoral, and cruel blockade of the island by the United States, and of course the travel ban on U.S. citizens, preventing them from seeing the Cuban Revolution for themselves. And I saw many, I was only there for 2 weeks, but I saw many really wonderful things, like what some of the comrades here have been talking about in Venezuela. We worked on a cooperative farm for a few days. We worked in some of the urban gardens that the Cubans have set up, which is really one of the most they basically restructured their entire agricultural system to use as little wasteful fossil fuels as possible, which I think is really a model of environmental sustainability that the whole world could learn from. We met veterans, elderly veterans of the Cuban Revolution. We visited visited, obviously, Che Guevara's mausoleum. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about my trip, but the point is, if it were not for Hugo Chavez and the support that the Bolivarian Revolution has given to socialist Cuba, I doubt Cuba would have survived as a socialist country to this day. When in the 90s, when they lost the Soviet aid, they were completely isolated in the world. And Hugo Chavez, in my view, pretty much came to the rescue. And I think, in that sense, like many others have been saying here, I think that is the real, that's the real importance of Hugo Chavez, is that he has reignited the fires, the revolutionary fires of the 1960s and 1970s. He's reconfigured this notion of a third world and oppressed peoples everywhere, including the United States, in solidarity against capitalism and imperialism. And for that alone, for that inspiration alone, I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think a lot of people, when the Arab Spring happened, when Occupy happened, there was all sorts of speculation as to what caused it, what inspired it. Was it, Facebook? Was it, WikiLeaks? Was it this or that and the other thing? But how few people give credit to the Bolivarian Revolution? How few people, it's not enough to simply say that capitalism is unjust and unfair and barbaric. To say that is one thing, but to actually put forth an alternative and to show an alternative that can actually work, and to put the lie to the claim that socialism doesn't work, that something beyond the hell of capitalism is possible, that is something else, and that is what Venezuela has provided. And I think it's because, there's no way of empirically proving this, but I think it's because of the example of Venezuela and Cuba and the other ALBA countries that workers all over the world are no longer buying that capitalism is the best we have to deal with. They're no longer buying it. I just remember just a few days ago, there were massive demonstrations in Portugal against the IMF austerity cuts. Massive demonstrations in hundreds of thousands of people in Spain and in Greece, and of course across, the uprisings across the Arab world. I really do think that we're moving into a new era, and of course it's the masses, of course it's the workers out in the streets and occupying the workplaces that make history. But leaders are important. Leaders can make people feel like they can do something that they never thought they could do before. And so, it was particularly inspiring for me what has been done in Cuba, and I wish to see Venezuela at some point in the future. Especially since just a few months before I'd been at the NATO protests, and where Ron had spent God knows how much money, financing a whole army to protect his Congress of War Criminals, while he's shutting down public schools, while he's cutting the social safety net, while he's shutting down public mental health centers. It was mentally cleansing to see that in other parts of the world, people have their priorities set straight. And that, hopefully one day I think that can happen here too. So that's just my piece, and thank you all for coming out. This really means a lot.
Hi. I would just like to say what Hugo Chavez has meant personally to me and how it's affected my actions and my early career as an organizer with Midwest Workers Association. Well, first off, I became very much aware of how much work we have to do here. And, for example, how much organization and, change is it going to take for us to have a healthcare system that is comprehensive, includes preventative care, that everybody has access to, like in Venezuela. And I thought at first, wow, this is impossible. How are we going to do this? Where has this been done? And I went and heard a lecture about the book Revolutionary Doctors, and I learned about barrio adentro and what is going on in Venezuela. And I learned it's not unattainable, and if anything, this was a call to action for me personally to put my body behind things that I had been talking about were so important. And of course, what our brothers and sisters in Venezuela have achieved and fought for in the revolution. So, and they were under great leadership of Hugo Chavez, and such an example provides hope to all of us engaged in the struggle of the working class. And such a tragic loss is felt by us all. And I guess the work of Hugo Chavez survives in all of us who are fighting for a better future for everyone around the world, and in the Venezuelan people who are fighting to keep it moving. So, thank you.
Buenas noches.
On behalf of La Voz de los de Abajo, it's a community organization here in Chicago. I have a message of solidarity to the Venezuelan people, todo ese bravo pueblo. Estamos con ellos, estamos convencidos que es una pérdida no solamente para el pueblo de Venezuela, sino que para Latinoamérica, el Caribe, para los otros países en el mundo que luchan por la justicia social, porque un mundo mejor sea posible para todos. We believe that this is not a loss only for the Venezuelan people, but also for the Latin American and the Caribbean and the world. People who fight for social justice around the world, believing that another world is possible. And there is a slogan that says in Español, Hugo Chavez, presente hoy y siempre. And I think that all of us can stand and say that, believing that Hugo Chavez is going to be present in our struggle every single day, because this is a long process, this is a long struggle no matter where we are, like different compañeros mentions. This is an international struggle, and we have to, tenemos que estar alerta, we have to be alert about toda la guerra mediática that's going to start. I mean, it's just amazing how Hugo Chavez survived toda la satanización de la guerra mediática que se hizo desde que tomó el gobierno en Venezuela. El principio nunca paró la guerra mediática. Ha sido uno de los presidentes más satanizados y demonizados en el planeta. Pero ahí estuvo, haciendo los cambios políticos, sociales, económicos y culturales, profundizando una revolución como nunca antes dado en Latinoamérica. So I would like to say that please stand and say, Hugo Chavez presente hoy y siempre. 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 There is one more that says, los que mueren por la vida no pueden llamarse muertos. De ahí primera, que es una consigna que se ha tomado en todo Venezuela y Latinoamérica, y es todos aquellos que mueren por la justicia social, luchando por un mundo mejor para todos, no podemos llamarles muertos porque ellos están presentes y estarán presentes en nuestros corazones. Los que mueren por la vida no pueden llamarse muertos. Los que mueren por la vida no pueden llamarse muertos. Hugo Chavez, presente.
I believe that we celebrated the age
I may interrupt real quick, we also have Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. that's here present with us. And I think we look forward to
Antes que nada, me llamo Raquel. Yo soy un soldado de la vida.
She is a soldier of the light.
Pues siento también esta pérdida porque yo sé que se siente perder un padre y sus hijos están sufriendo
She
esta pérdida.
feels bad because she knows about where to lose someone.
Y es un ejemplo a seguir.
He is an example to.
Hugo Chávez es un ejemplo a seguir.
Yeah.
Eso es todo.
Yeah.
I come from Mexico, so you know, Hugo Chavez loves a lot Mexican people. So Mexican people love Hugo Chavez because he's an important person. He had the personality to fight. To fight different problems, to fight at his country, not the American people, of the government of the United States. It is, I would like to be clear that. So he don't die. He lives now and he gave us force to continue. Okay? Thank you.
Greetings. I'm Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., son of Chairman Fred Hampton, who's Hugo Chavez, chairman of the Black Panther Party. He was assassinated December 4th, 1969, along with his comrade, Episcopal Mark Clark, on a day in which we define as one of the most brutal acts of terrorism to ever occur on U.S. soil. I chair an organization, the POCC, or known as the Black Panther Party Cubs. I've been honored to do a lot of coalition work with a lot of different forces, Rebel Diaz, in particular, we do a lot of work in Chicago, Bronx, you name it. I'm honored and humbled to be here. And we talk about, we reflect back during the 60s, the Black Power movement of the 60s, there was reports from Vietnam and throughout the world, how they received inspiration from various forces. And the deal is how the system, how imperialism understands that when they break certain forces, that it can be contagious. And the deal is with resistance, can be an uprising, a revolution, it can be contagious, it can be infectious. And although I have never had the opportunity to be go to Venezuela, but it was infectious. The resistance, the spirit, the revolutionary fight and the stand that we've been taking over there in Venezuela. So again, we say we arm with a politic that does not limit us to colonial borders, and we must heighten the conscious level to be able to distinguish rioting from rebellion, reactionary from revolution, stealing from liberating, and also in particular to be able to distinguish existing from living. And Presidente Hugo Chavez was an extraordinary example of living. So we want to say revolutionary condolences, clenched fist condolences to the legacy of Presidente Hugo Chavez.
I just want to say that I've admired Jeff, but I don't think I've admired him for years, and reading his story, listening to his interviews, he said at 17 he joined the military because he couldn't afford to play softball, and they had a softball team. But in the military, there was a point in time when the military was sent out to repress the people, and from inside the military, he had enough conscience and enough decency to say this is not right. And he turned against the military. He tried to take his country because they were oppressing his people. And he didn't succeed the first time when they put him in jail. Fortunately, they didn't kill him. A couple of years later, I think as a political move, they pardoned him because they knew he was popular with the common people. And one of the things that really impressed me, a reporter approached him when he was getting released from prison, and he asked him, where are you going to go now? And he said, to power. And for the next couple of years, he went around Venezuela and he took over the country through the ballot box. And I say that to say that in America, we're too comfortable. And the ruling class is very adept at letting us feel better about ourselves, but nothing really changes. And I think it's getting very, very worse in America now. Even today they were talking about, Eric Holder said he couldn't swear to it that they won't use drones against American citizens in America. So we need to be real serious about what we're going to do. And Chavez is a good example of what we should do.
Good evening. My name is Maria. I am a public employee. I am a member of AFME. And today was special for me because we are in the process of ratification of our contract. And at the same time, I have the opportunity to talk about Hugo Chavez. Why? Because workers around the world, they are facing the austerity measure, meaning the state is small and small. No service, everything is profit. Education, health, housing. What happened in Venezuela? So today, I have the opportunity to talk with my co-workers and say, you know what? We are facing a hard time here. But what is going on with the Venezuelan people? Venezuelan people, they have public education. We have the access, not for profit, but a right. What happened with health? We are fighting here for insurance, premiums. There we have a right of health. What happened? The increasing in Venezuela of public housing. How many homeless do we have here in the United States? So, for me, the homage for Compañero Chavez was to stand up and say, you know what? Today, workers in the United States will have a huge legacy. We need to be able to fight back and say, you know what? The Bolivarian Revolution is alive, and we will be fighting for her here and supporting Caracas and Venezuela.
Well, thank you all. So I do want to wrap up because I think everybody's had a chance to speak. Again, I would like to thank Consul General Rodriguez, just again, publicly to all of you for all the support. He has helped facilitate the legacy of President Hugo Chavez for our members of Midwest Workers Association, some of the lowest paid workers on the south side of Chicago, and that support has been very material. Most recently, the donation of over 3,000 high-efficiency light bulbs so that our members can cut down their energy bills and continue the struggle not only to survive, but to organize and fight. And just very briefly, on a very personal level, because I do represent my organization always, but I've been thinking a lot the past 24 plus hours of what President Chavez's example and the Bolivarian Revolution's example means to me. And in a nutshell, and I think a lot of people here have spoken of this, but it's all things are possible, all things take organization, and all things take work. And that takes dedication. And President Chavez provided, to me most of all, it wasn't his speaking, although he was an incredible speaker. It wasn't his charisma, although Lord knows he was charismatic. But it was the fact that he dedicated his entire life to the people. And that is something I think all of us need to emulate and fight for that struggle and for the things that we admire in President Chavez and in the Bolivarian Revolution today and always. So thank you all so very much for coming and helping to share our grief and mourning together. And have a good night.